This video is a highlight of a particular species of animal, which has tips for drawing it and also scientific information about the creature. Some will focus on a single species and some will focus more on a group of life. This information is very useful for working on that creature, anything else that's a close relative, or making up mythical creatures that are based on these real creatures or groups of life. This creature is Inostrancievia, the largest known species of Gorgonopsid. It was 3.5 meters, which is 11.5 feet long, with a narrow skull up to 60 centimeters, 24 inches long. Their saber teeth were 15 centimeters, or 5.9 inches long. Half of that length is the root. Gorgonopsids, also called Gorgonopsidae or Gorgonopsians, are a branch of proto-mammals, sometimes called parareptiles or mammal-like reptiles, which is a group of life between the reptile and mammal families that were around a very long time ago. Working on the skeletal reconstruction, I looked at several references, and I noticed that different paleontologist reconstructions may have had the legs splayed out a bit more or had a slightly more upright stance. I decided to have the front legs on my reconstruction not be completely splayed, but still more splayed than a true mammal. It's unclear if the creature had scales or any fur, as it was related to both families. Most of the recent evidence points to the fact that it may have just had thick skin rather than scales or fur, but may have had a small amount of whiskers or a few quills. Because it's not known for sure, any versions of these reconstructions can be considered fairly scientifically accurate and plausible. I worked on the musculature before, and now I'm doing a scaled reconstruction, as well as a slightly furred or quilled reconstruction. It's possible the ancient fur that was present on these creatures, if any, was very rough and more quill-like. So a more mammal-like reconstruction is plausible, but also a more reptilian one is. Here I'm going back and correcting, as I realized the reference I was using actually had the tip of the tail cut off, so I had to go back and add more. Don't be afraid to go back and make corrections and adjustments to make things more accurate or better quality than they were before. It's not something to be ashamed of. In fact, it's better to spot these problems and fix them when you can. But it's still good to get artwork done and put things out there, even if they're not completely 100% perfect. We all do our best with the information we have. So, moving forward, here I am coloring in those 4 reconstructions from the side that you saw me do larger before. And I'm working out the scaled one as being more reptilian looking and the furred one as being more mammalian looking. I also chose to have the belly dip in a bit beyond the ribs because that's a plausible reconstruction, although I've seen reconstructions where the belly is more barrel-like and goes more straight across to the hip bones rather than dipping in the way I reconstructed it. Both versions are plausible. This large creature was an active and powerful carnivorous predator that hunted large prey animals in its day, which were called Scutosaurus. It probably hunted a few other creatures as well. Here I'm doing a size chart. I decided to plot it out in equally sized squares, label both sides, and then I created in a separate file a cat and a human, and I could put them up against it to show the size. I'm working out the above view skeleton by comparing it to my side view skeleton, so I can get the proportions and sizes accurate. As I'd already done such a well-detailed skeleton, I can use it as a reference to work out a skeleton from a different angle. As you can see, I was lining up parts of the skeleton with the other skeleton in order to work it out. I also flipped the direction of the ribs when I realized it looks more realistic to have them facing the other way from the top view. Here I am filling in details of the skeleton and making it match up in size and exact bone number to my side view. Plotting it all out takes a lot of work. Doing a full skeletal reconstruction is more difficult than just drawing the surface anatomy of the creature, but it's often worth it to get a true understanding of that creature's anatomy. Working out the muscular reconstruction is also very important for a proper understanding of the overall anatomy of the creature. And it's not a step that should be skipped before going to the full reconstruction, when you're doing a full anatomy study, that is. As I begin the front view in a moment, I'm actually the least proud of the direct front view version that I did. I made the most mistakes and it seems a bit off and the least accurate. but I still did the best I could at the time. I'm probably going to try to do a front view or a 3/4 front view reconstruction of this creature or a close relative sometime in the future to try to do a better job. I did make the claws way too large initially here, and I corrected it later, but I still think it's a decent reconstruction. It also shows some of the mistakes you can make. Even if you're already understanding the anatomy from different angles, the creature looks different from each view, so it's important to understand that. I do have a Gorgonopsian model, which was done by Jurassic Park a very long time ago, that I can look at to see it in 3 dimensions. But as this is a toy that's not completely accurate, nor this exact species, I still have to definitely look at fossil record evidence in order to reconstruct a creature like this more accurately. Living during the Upper Tartarian, fossils have been dated between 260 and 254 million years ago. Most of this era of fossils are known very well from fossil deposits in northern Russia. Found first in a Sokolki assemblage in the end of the 19th century, exhibited in St. Petersburg in the year 1900, but proper published descriptions did not debut until 1922. Named by the Russian paleontologist Vladimir P. Amalitsky in honor of the Russian geologist Alexander Inostrancievia. The prey animal they hunted, Scutosaurus, as mentioned earlier in this video, had thick armor plates and was very large, thus necessitating such large canine teeth and powerful jaws on a creature that needed to hunt them. Here I am doing a 3/4 front view reconstruction, but I forgot to put the proper strength of jaw muscles rather than leaving a dip behind the eye that should be filled in with muscle. I will be correcting that later. I also made the claws far too large, so I had to make some corrections later. I just thought I'd mention that now. I'm using Procreate, and I'm doing this in layers. I actually did the shadow layer on top of the other layers, and then selected with the selection tool, and simply erased everything outside of the lines. I'm working everything out to try to get this creature in 3-dimensional space. I'm trying to get the proportions and anatomy correct, while also trying to get it to look more action-packed and dynamic as a 3-dimensional form. I'm working everything out. I decided I definitely wanted to do a line art for this. Eventually I changed the line art to a colored line art, but at this stage I'm still working out all the underneath colors and the forms, and deciding what I'm going to do with the patterning. This reconstruction begins as a scaled or skin version, and I also change it later and show a furred reconstruction. I'm deepening all the shadows, and I'm deciding where I need to make corrections. And then I duplicated the line art layer, used the alpha lock function in order to only color where I've already colored, and quickly done a color line art version by only going over the areas of the lines. Here's where I'm correcting the claws, to be shorter and duller. I do believe the claws were very large though, because of how big they are in the bone core fossil. This here is correcting to have stronger jaw muscles, a more mammalian looking nose, as well as this version being the plausible but less likely furry reconstruction. I'm also going back in and correcting a few things on the scaly/skin version there. I hope you learned many things about Inostrancievia and Gorgonopsians in general, very useful for paleo art reconstruction as well as inventing your own mythical creatures based on Gorgonopsians. I hope you look forward to future videos in this series of spotlight anatomy studies of various creatures. I'm planning on doing various videos, including some upcoming traditional art stuff. Well, until next time, goodbye!